I'll call the meeting of September 15th, 2025 to order. I should probably start with a roll call. Aaron?
Here.
Elizabeth?
Here.
Peter?
Here.
John?
Here.
Dan here? Mark?
Here.
Linda?
Here.
Linda here? Is that here? I didn't. Okay, Scott?
Here.
So it's something on our.
Yeah, I don't,
They're ready to turn for TV. Really volume.
It should be connected to the app.
Can you not hear me?
You hear me?
I can hear you,
Okay.
but I guess no one can hear me.
I can hear you.
Oh, okay, fine. Sorry.
But Emily's offline too.
Fortunately, Scott doesn't
She's
really
remote.
have much more to say.
Can you see me?
Yes,
I can see you, I can hear you.
Oh,
yeah, I got it. Wow. Just needed to get him upset. Linda, can you say you're here again, please?
here.
Here.
And Emily?
here.
The next order of business is to approve the minutes of, where's Patrick? Yep, Patrick, you wanna say hi?
He's locked, so you gotta give me a second.
Okay.
Alright, I just made him a cover, so you should be able to.
Patrick, can you say hi?
Hi, everybody.
Great, thank you. That's good to hear. And we need a clerk for the meeting. Thank you, Elizabeth. All right, so the first order of business after that is approve the meeting minutes of September 2nd. Great,
So moved, Peter.
thank you, Peter.
Second.
Mark, thank you for a second. I will, again, Aaron,
Yes.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
John,
Yes,
Dan, yes, Mark,
Yes.
Linda,
Yes,
Scott,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Thank you all. Next order of business is updates from the town staff. And a DCAM coordination. Want to start with Megan, do you want to?
Sure.
Great.
Yes, we had a meeting on Friday with, myself, Mark, Dan, Paul Lilhagen from DCAM and Alan. I think that was everybody, right?
Yeah.
I think that was group. This is the standing bi-weekly meeting that we have, but it has been a few weeks since we met. And, I think that we gave an update in the meeting to Paul from DCAM about kind of where the town is right now and the work around MCI, which, I shared that this group has been meeting, even more regularly than normal. The select board has been discussing this topic on a regular basis. And I shared that, we are getting closer to being able to answer the question, what does the town want to see over here? And, we also floated an idea for a workshop sometime in October that would include some members of, likely this board, select board, staff and DCAM to have a real-time exchange of ideas that, so we could present some concepts and hear back from them, instead of having it be kind of a little bit more removed process of sending something out and waiting for a response. So they were very, or Paul was, interested in that idea and is looking forward to hearing more from us. And then Alan, do you want to talk about what you were sharing and how you feel like the map was received with Paul?
Sure, you recall that we, presented you with a concept plan of the area around the wastewater treatment plant, 300-foot sort of buffer area. Identified sort of the egress into the wastewater treatment plant, some of the natural buffers, riverfront, that sort of thing. I think it was received very well because it gave Paul a chance, he's a planner. So around the general concept, it started sort of putting some lines on a map that he could kind of relate to. using your recommendations, we've, added some detail, to that plan. I don't wanna take over this meeting, I could share that with you if you want it or not, but basically you identify how much area, for instance, we'd be carving out that was residential. We did that work, we shared that with Paul, we also had, I will be, clear, we talked about the capacity, wastewater capacity opportunities. Shared that with DCAM, they understand we're looking at, expanding maybe some of that site to allow for the, formerly the sand beds. I'd say it was all received well, because it gave them something to start really looking at in detail. I think, he wanted me to share that, so I did sort of immediately. So I think we're making progress. I know that we've also talked, to be very clear, about the impact and opportunities in the Junction Village. And again, that's a different parcel of land. And so, to be clear, we have not had any formal conversation with, DCHR, was it CHDC, thank you. But that's something we look to do in the not too distant future. No, it was a successful, meeting. And I think they really appreciated that it shows that we're putting energy, effort into, sort of giving them information that would be useful, so. Short of that, that's the high level. But it was received well, and I think, understandable, so it wasn't a surprise. It's also good to know.
And I'll just note that, I thought that the graphic, you tweaked the graphic a little bit and it's become increasingly clear. I think that's a really powerful tool for people grasping what we're talking about doing.
Is that, I haven't seen the graphic, is that in the pack?
I can share it with you if you wanted to be, or not, I can go through it in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Come up, so I need the mouse, then I just zoomed in here, so. I can,
Yeah, while Alan's getting
Yeah.
set up too, we had also had the request from this board to understand a little bit more about the list of properties that DCAM is currently marketing. And so we made that request, and he mentioned that Abby Vladik, who we've been working with, has a new role as an assistant director. And she's basically running the program, which is involved in the surplus properties, and the state has actually gone to auction with 5 properties that were sold earlier last week. For 100 units approximately of housing of the 25 acres. There is a property at Middlesex Community College in Bedford, which is open bidders at the moment. And there didn't seem to be anything else that was that directly competitive to MCI specifically.
Right, and the Middlesex property is slightly different disposition model.
Yeah.
The other thing that she mentioned is, Megan has tried to reiterate, or did reiterate, the request for site tours. And so it was heard. Paul still seems to be, concerned about logistically how that would work. He definitely heard the request.
Okay. So if you look up, on the screen, you'll see this is the vision plan that agency generated with your support, just showing the, this is the MCI property, and then the Junction Village is down south. I'm gonna take off the vision plan just temporarily, so you can kind of get a better sense of the green dash is the property line. To help identify the area of interest around the treatment facility, if I put the actual features that we talked about, I zoom in, you can see this is the area of interest of actual kind of brick and mortar, and then there's the former sand beds. I talked about, in the past, the sand beds down in Junction Village. You can see that extends down, this is the area that was formerly sort of identified. We know the site work and environmental work for Junction Village was complete, so that's an important, information. We're talking about in the area around the sand beds here, the wastewater treatment infrastructure. There hasn't been any detailed environmental work. There was some geotech work for identifying what kind of loading rates it could take, but we haven't done any next level phase 2 environmental work in that area. If we then sort of superimpose this red area here, that image, actually, I wonder if I can get, go up to parcels, aerial, I take the aerial off. Yeah, so just so you can kind of see, I'll take the aerial off. It's a little clearer to see. But this area here is a 300-foot offset we're talking about along the kind of brick and mortar. If we then create sort of a boundary with meets and bounds, this is the area that we talked about. And then I can kind of superimpose this on the vision plan. And so now you can see the area of interest was this shaded area. Down here is really open space, riverfront, the Assabet sort of, trends right along this green line here. The area of concern is, well, if we're eliminating, how much area from our concept or vision plan from residential would be impacting. So we actually have provided some detail, to add to that. So basically, we're looking at about 4.6 acres of area that was formerly identified for residential development. This area is kind of interesting. The gray area you had formerly identified as kind of industrial, kind of commercial. Well, that's where the wastewater treatment plant is anyway. I'm sure it was sort of captured. I think the real gap was that when we did the agency work, they really didn't create that buffer, and that was sort of the concern. When you look at this area here, around this wetland, riverfront, you can see it really does take out of the development potential a pretty significant area. But we know that's going to be dedicated towards open space, has access to the Assabet, that sort of thing, I think, in concept. Yeah.
Can the sand beds, would the sand beds be restored in the river buffer?
Yeah, not so much in the river buffer. There's some modeling that we need to do, the details. So, you have a 200-foot riverfront,
Right.
You have 100-foot off of the wetlands, we'll be looking at the details of that. But when we're done with the sand beds, we're talking about the equivalent of a groundwater, like a septic system, like a leaching field. So it would be subsurface, and above it could be paths, someone talked about dog park, whatever it is, it's just, but no structures per se. So any event, this was again, all shared with Paul with DCAM, very much helped understand, I think we did add the sewer easement. If I capture that, that came up here. I'll zoom in a little bit. This area here, this is where we know for the service to the farm, this has to be replaced. And right now, if I put the aerial photo in, the sewer service from north comes down, and it's actually runs inside the existing wall and then comes out. They would likely to allow for redevelopment of this area, locate it probably in an area like this. They identified the access road. We talked about the need for Junction Village to have access, a road of, egress in and out somehow. Maybe that could be complementary. But in essence, I think it was based on the discussion we had, your feedback, I think it was really useful for them to really get a sense of, what kind of area are we talking about. He did ask, what other use could be, if it's not residential, could this be repurposed for something else? And the answer is yes, something more industrial. We've talked about municipal, that wouldn't prohibit that. So I think that was basically the update. I'm not sure if this is in your packet yet, as far as your working documents or not, Megan, I'll make sure, this is now, DCAM has it. I think this has also been shared with the working group, municipal land use working group, and so it should be sort of part of your packet.
Patrick has a question. Patrick?
Thanks, Dan. Alan, thanks so much. This is fantastic. Really, really helpful. Just a couple, two questions. One is in the hashed area that says undevelopable land in MCI parcel.
Yeah,
As you look kind of north of the current wastewater treatment plant, if that was going to be, used for Department of Public Works, could structures be built on that hashed area or no? Is question one. And then just the second question is, as we think about this offset and kind of the smell and the sight lines and everything that we talked about in the last meeting, is there anything that is there any new technology or anything that maybe it's super expensive, I don't know, that could be done that further mitigates that? I'm just thinking about the economic impact of having, a wastewater treatment plant in the middle of a new development. So those are two. Thanks, Alan.
great question. So first of all, let's just talk about the technology and mitigation for odor. There's always things that can be done to improve the odor management. That would have to be explored. It's not part of the existing, $25 million needs assessment. You can consider things like covers and things like that could help mitigate for additional costs. So yes, over at our existing wastewater treatment plant, we did end up as part of our reconstruction in 2007. We added some processes to help improve, odor management. So yes, there's things that can be done. It's too early to know the specifics as far as what we'll end up with over, at this facility. But regardless, and I think the question and concern came up with, well, the awareness of, well, what about this buffer on Junction Village? And what I said is, well, that's always been there. The reality is now we're identifying it. The difference is we will be able to, if the town takes ownership, manage and mitigate. When it was part of the state, what's their incentive to do anything? I think our incentive would be more to have be a good neighbor, so to speak. So that's the answer to the technology. And as far as the existing build out development, again, there's guidance on 200-foot buffer from the riverfront, 100-foot off of the wetlands, and then there's a floodplain as well. So whatever we can do in that area, we'll explore. But what's important is if it's municipal, I'm gonna get rid of the overlay. Where is it? The vision plan. What's important to kind of see is there's buildings already in this area. And those are grandfathered. And then the condition of those, could be repurposed for municipal use. That has real value. And part of what we're trying to understand is what can we do that a private developer might not be able to for, value, but also by not having to remove or demolish, there's a value there as well. So all those, Patrick, are what we'll be sort of exploring, which is I think the town can take more advantage of some of these grandfathered properties in any new development could.
Is the land, or are there uses within the buffer zone that will be grandfathered, not just the building, but for example, paved areas or, parking areas where you might be able to park trucks and that sort of thing?
So if you look here, you get that, this shaded area, you can see this is a large structure right here.
Yeah.
That is in pretty good condition.
They're shipping and receiving.
It's shipping and receiving, and there's another structure right next to it, but that alone, is the question is, what kind of use? I don't know yet, but I think that's what we'll be exploring in the short term. That's our next interest is to understand, what could we maximize or realize if it's municipal that might not be the same value of a private developer were to take it.
For the zone that's part of the 300-foot you know, the sort of overlap to the left of the wastewater treatment plant. That's into this potential previously defined residential area.
Yeah,
You know, you've drawn your kind of perimeter cyan sort of boundary around it. Do you think it's important, knowing that maybe it's not ideal for residential, but it could be used for other things, that zone be part of a parcel for the town, or could it just be zoned in a way that helps protect the 300 foot, but isn't necessarily part of the town allocation or something?
I think that's the question, that's an option. I will say that with the groundwater recharge area, we're looking at possibly not limiting, this is all pretty uniform hydrogeology there. So this area here, which wasn't formally part of the sand beds, could potentially be repurposed for groundwater discharge too. That's to be determined, so that would have value for the wastewater capacity.
Just in addition to that, Alan, I'm wondering if you're thinking about things like what might be really useful would be have all required parking for the redevelopment be within that setback. And you could have it be, you know, porous pavement, and you could have solar PV canopies on top, so it would generate some revenue for the community at the same time. I'm thinking that might help solve some of the site redevelopment issues that we keep bumping into, such as parking.
Yeah, I suppose playing fields is probably also compatible with your groundwater discharge, something like a soccer field.
Yeah, it's interesting. We actually had presented that as a solution down in White Pond neighborhood with the Willard School back in the day. That was, 25 years ago. It wasn't accepted at that point, but I don't think it's prohibited.
You're worried about the turf bleeding out or?
Yeah, I think it might be better use to do that in the setback, the riverfront setback area. Or if we're gonna do structured parking, have the playing field be on the top.
In any event, so now you have the same information that DCAM was provided, and DCAM was actually, I think, pleased to see the town is making progress. Because I think the next step is gonna be, they're really interested in, well, what's going on with wastewater? And what are you doing with zoning? And if we can this can help inform what we're gonna with zoning, I think they can appreciate that we're making progress.
One more question, is it your belief that in order to restore the wastewater, the treatment plant to full capacity, which I don't think it ever has been, would you need to basically reactivate all those sand beds?
This is where we need to go into this range of 150 to 300,000 gallons a day. One of the factors that we need to consider is the impact onto the Assabet River and the mounding and that kind of thing. So there's details we need to look into on that, but really it's how much of that area and what's the value of the capacity of the community greater, and then, where's the cost benefit?
And is the thinking still that 25 million roughly would get you to 310,000 gallons per day of?
Very roughly, yes.
Yeah, but I think the answer to your question, John, was that 25 million would allow us to take advantage of the surface water discharge permit from the EPA at the 310,000, and then the sand, if we'd actually be over and above that at an additional cost.
Okay, so that was going to determine.
Yeah, and that's where the range of whether that's 50% more capacity or up to 100% more capacity.
The last comment / question, what you said about the 300-foot buffer has always existed.
Yeah.
We just didn't realize it was there.
We didn't factor it in.
Was there, with the plan, with the RFP that was gonna go out a few years ago for Junction Village, would that have potentially infringed on that buffer without essentially knowing about it?
Well, I think they would have known about it and they would have designed around it, and I can't remember where they were intending to do their own.
It was over on the
recharge.
left-hand
Yeah.
side of the more to the left.
Yeah, so I think they'd already favored
Side of
the
it.
distance, so that was factored in, and I think part of their groundwater discharge would have been to repurpose the former sand beds potentially.
But even just looking at the parcel boundaries, the 300-foot buffer doesn't overlap into the Junction Village parcel at all. So if you had any.
It does, no, it did, it did, I'm sorry, I just took it off, but,
I don't think so.
yeah.
If there's that,
Okay, so, let's see,
yeah, the
All right.
parcel boundary is.
thank you, yeah, there's the town, there's the property line right
Yeah,
here.
so
here's
Junction
300
Village
foot.
is south of there.
Exactly,
And the
Okay.
red line is north of it.
Yeah.
thank you for picking up this.
So the sand bits do with the 300-foot buffers.
Yeah, correct.
Pretty cash.
Yeah.
No, there's that. You know, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
Anyway,
I thank you, Ron. It's great. The next order of business is reviewing the additional deliverables that, we got from the agency. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at it? Anyone had a chance to look at it?
Just for context, okay, you know, a few months ago now, we discussed. Additional steps for agency, and so we contracted with them to do three things. One was to incorporate the comments and the vision plan that has been completed. And that is now online. There was a press release, I think the communications subcommittee for their work, you know, kind of reviewing that and working with staff on that. We also asked them to update the MCI webpage to make sure the report was prominently focused there. That has been completed. And the third task was to come up with a slide deck that can be modified and kind of customized for different conversations. It has a lot of slides in it, and so I think Shannon sent that out last week, and that was, you know, kind of the third piece. And so, you know, if folks have any feedback on that, we'd be happy to take it.
But you can't miss it on the webpage.
I think it looks great in the web, and I see we also have it on our website of the town, website, which is great. And they've now handed it over to you for future items.
Yeah, me and Donna both have access to the MCI-Concord.org webpage. So any routine edits that need to be made to that, we can do that.
It's great. I think it's wonderful, we've been waiting to kind of officially make this available to the town, so this is
Right.
great, and I did the site, it's really nice, I don't know if the other members of the building. Usually our subcommittee of comments, but. Thank you, Megan.
Oh, sure.
Yes, appreciate it.
Thanks, Scott.
Scott?
Yeah, I realize Vision's gonna be updating this report and, sending it out, but we just learned this new information about this 300-foot buffer. If we're sharing this with the town, how are we gonna communicate this buffer and how does it affect Vision's plans that we can actually realistically do? Do they need to go back out and have another scenario, or how does this work?
So, yeah, I feel like we talked about this maybe 6 weeks ago when we were making our initial comments on the plan. And I think we recognize that this is gonna be a living plan in some ways, and yet, agency was only contracted to produce the plan once, right? So, I think it's a fair point that someone could read through this and say, wait a second, there was no mention of a 300-foot buffer in the vision plan. But I think we may be better served, well, as a practical matter, we're not gonna go back and keep changing the report, we can't do that, but we should probably have a disclaimer on the site that says very clearly that this plan was dated as of a certain date certain. And that subsequent modifications or insights or whatever will not be included there, but maybe we can find a way to kind of have a little window that has kind of like updates since the plan was published. Does that make sense?
Well, it's also worth reiterating that the buffer is not a requirement, it's best practice, right? So
Yeah,
it doesn't mean that we can't potentially put residential, and I don't know that the agency thing went so far as saying what what part of the residential component actually went there, so I don't know if they're precluding a lot of it.
Yeah. Yeah, but whether it's this buffer or other things that we realize or decide post-publication, this plan will rapidly age.
Moment.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I guess at some level, I am curious, but it doesn't invalidate the point that was just made, but I am curious what, I think it would fall under Mitch's jurisdiction or focus in terms of the work that was done. You know, they commented on it, how that, I mean, I trust Weston Sampson for sure. So I don't know what we do with that. I think the point, it sort of relates to me, we're already starting to get some comments or chatter on the website of people saying the report doesn't look like it addressed the Route 2 rotary redesign.
Yeah.
And so, you know, how do we, maybe it is just to your point, we say this is what we understood at a given moment, and it's going to continue to develop and inform.
Right, and I think we recognize that, and the fact that we have to wait for the state creates certain uncertainty. And I think we just need to be able to communicate that to the public, that uncertainty is out there around what the redesign is like. Because we won't know for another 3 or 4 years what that's gonna look like.
Yeah, I think going back to the question about the buffer zone, scenarios 1 and 2 in that plan actually didn't encroach nearly as much on buffer as scenario 3. So what we've been looking at in the example now is pulled up, sort of the worst case against the highest density scenario, or the highest residential use scenario. Anyway, scenario 1, I think largely left that, I've been calling this semicircle, that area to the west of the wastewater treatment facility to be sort of commercial anyway, which might be more compatible with those in those scenarios too. I think it approached something a little bit more, but again, left some of it used for what purpose. So it's not, point is, it's not completely incompatible, it's just.
As a kind of pragmatic suggestion, if you look at the homepage, to the left of the graphic that says vision plan, there's enough space above the button. But I think we could put a disclaimer that says, they literally say disclaimer. This report was, published on such and such dates, and there will be subsequent developments that are not captured in that report.
Yeah.
Just please be aware of some of that.
Yeah, I think, Donna was sort of talking about this when she wrote her press release, like often it says. You can provide feedback here, and not that you're not accepting feedback, but we did want to make it clear that this report isn't going to be updated.
Right.
So I guess at one point we correct me if I'm wrong, at one point I have a vague recollection of what we said is we were gonna do the have agency develop a slide deck. And then we were going to circle back to the 90 something stakeholder groups and start to socialize that and see if, is that still the plan? And if it is the plan, what do we want to do with this latest piece of information that Scott brought up?
It's a good question. I think we should think about I know the press release was published, but we should probably write a note to all of our stakeholders and just send an email that has that press release, that has a link to the plan, and maybe offers, to speak directly with anyone who wants to.
I know a couple committees were like waiting until the fall, I think, from hoping to hear from you all, so.
Okay.
The timing would work out.
I think what's great about that, John, if I understood you correctly, is it's an opportunity to have a live conversation with them and to sort of reinforce this idea that we're working with uncertainties and things like that.
But would anyone in the community outreach subcommittee like to volunteer to write that letter to our stakeholders?
You can have this up to you business.
All right, we'll touch base later.
I'll touch base with you later on, John.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, is there anything else to cover on that item? I'm not seeing, oh, Scott,
Yeah, go back to Patrick's question about what can be built in that dashed area. We talked about existing buildings that are could potentially be a grandfather, but can new structures be built, municipal structures be built on the dashed land on the north?
Are you talking about the riverfront area or the?
Yeah, the riverfront above the wastewater going between the state police and the wastewater treatment. Is that outlaw? You cannot build on that, new buildings on that dash land?
I think it would be difficult. It may not be impossible, but it might be really close to that.
a boat launch maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. That's my question anyways. Not saying any other questions. The next order of business is, reports from subcommittees. And Sean just stepped out. I'm gonna look to you, Peter, to see if you have anything. You haven't really been meeting.
We haven't met, but as mentioned, I spoke with in the Neshoba Valley Chamber of Commerce. Do you want me to
Yes, that would be
comment on
awesome.
that?
Thank you.
Last Tuesday, I was had the privilege of speaking to the Neshoba Valley Chamber of Commerce along with Monica Nubbs Tibbetts, who's the CEO of Mass Department of Transportation. And there was general consensus in the room and about supporting fast tracking, putting the Route 2 rotary improvements on the transportation improvement plan once we and DOT reach some type of concurrence on a preferred design that will also include input from other communities in the region. I relayed the complex nature of the MCI site, the open issues of the rotary, the suite of alternatives generated by our consultant team, environmental remediation questions, and questions around the wastewater treatment plant. And I discussed, requesting that they consider looking at the temporary bridge they're going to be doing because they're going to be redoing the bridge over the Aspen. Whether or not they consider doing that as a permanent bridge, and maybe it could serve as a frontage road along the site at some point in the future. They said it's probably a little too early for that, but they're just giving them some options and creating some for us. So. And that was the extent. People were very excited about it, and they invited us to come back next year and update them on the incredible progress we're going to be making in the next 12 months. So,
Excellent. John, do you have any comments from the subcommittee, from the community outreach?
No, I don't.
Okay.
We stopped at this site and it.
And Elizabeth? Okay, all right, and then I believe that, well, we'll do public comment. Are there any comments from the folks on, looks like Carol Savoy?
I've done unmute.
Yes.
Just quickly from the select board.
Yes.
We did I've been keeping the select board updated on our progress as we've been working through our ideas. The select board is very excited about the possibility of this board with a recommendation that looks something like an updated scenario, building on what Alan has done. And we'd be interested in the board's recommendation around what the specific next steps are going to be. I'll continue to hold open as soon as we think we have something we want to say to the board. We've been basically doing an executive session almost every meeting so that we can stay on top of the various land opportunities that have come forward, and so we'll happily schedule this as soon as possible.
Excellent, thank you. And did Alan, did you present that yet to the?
Yeah.
Your concept, I couldn't
To the
remember.
select board?
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. Thank you. Okay. All right, Carol, sorry for the delay.
Sure, not a problem. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent work, by the way. Really loved what Alan was showing earlier with the graphic. It would be great if you could post that on the website when you know, get it to a point you want to share it with the public. My question has to do with the RFP. I thought DCAM was, according to the original timeline, going to send an RFP out for this sometime in early 2026. I was just trying to get an update on when you think DCAM might be sending out the RFP.
We do, at least the conversations that we've been having with DCAM so far, Tara, don't indicate that we're really at that stage yet. They're also required to have at least 3 public forums. And we'd certainly be interested in comments related to what we'd like to hear from DCAM next, because the conversations that we have had with them suggest that we might want to have that second major session sponsored by DCAM happen sometime this fall, but we haven't quite felt like we got to the point where there was a lot of new information to share. Most of that information's been developed by the town. We've been having our own meetings, but so I think we're still a little way from the RFP. They're obviously interested in where we stand on zoning, because I think they do look at a zoning proposal as being something that is kind of a prerequisite to being able to let, you know, put together an RFP that developers would in fact respond to.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, Mark, I mean, I think the concept was, and, you know, DCAM can correct me if I'm wrong, was that we would rezone the property and then DCAM would put out the RFP. So sort of a 2-step dance that we have to go through, maybe even 3 steps. We could call it a waltz.
Yeah.
Great. Well, that's very helpful. And I guess that brings me to the next question is, when do you think you may start with the zoning?
As soon as we coalesce around a preferred scenario. So, and we are certainly making some good progress in that regard, but I can't give you a more specific timeline than that.
Okay, that's very helpful. And looking at the graphic that you showed, it looked like, you know, when you take the 300-foot buffer and the other things into consideration, did I see a number roughly 32 acres left for developable, or is it more than that?
Alan, have you done that math based on what?
Maybe not, I'll bring it back up to date.
I think it's more than that. We always had kept the riverfront setback out of the, you know, we talked about 51 developable acres, and that excluded the riverfront setback area, so.
I think it depends if you include the Junction Square. The Junction Square is like 12 or 30.
It was 32.1 acres on the MCI property that just developed.
Did you hear that whole thing, Carol?
Yeah, I did. I was just trying kind of, I guess it brings me to the next question. I know you have 3 scenarios. You're trying to, you know, narrow it down to something. And I think it was, you know, something like the middle one was like 400 units, and the larger one, like number 3, was like 750 units. And I guess my question is, you know, does DCAM have a minimum number of housing units that they feel that we need to put there to make this an acceptable, proposal to both Concord and to DCAM and to developers? Is there a number we're trying to target of residential units?
Think
Hi,
the-
Carol.
is not, sorry. Somebody else?
I was gonna try and answer that, Mark. The short answer is no, Carol. There's not a specific number that DCAM is solving for, or a minimum number.
Okay, and is there a number that Concord is trying to solve for?
Not yet.
Okay. Yeah, I was just doing the math, so if you say it's 15 units an acre or something, and you have 32 acres, that's roughly 500 units if you're not putting any commercial in there, is that kind of where we land?
Yeah, one of the things that, we tend to, when we're talking about it from the town perspective, I think this is the answer to your previous question. Sometimes we are, and often in this process, we're including the Junction Village parcel in that, which is in addition to the 32 acres that's on the MCI parcel. So that gives you a number that's closer to 43 or 45 acres. If you take the two parcels together. And so, which of course leads you to a very different density number. Depending on how many units you put on, but that's really the work of this group, is to try and figure it out. Based on some of the other constraints that are outlined in the vision report, like the impact on surfaces and what it does to traffic, and whether or not there's wastewater capacity to support that level of development.
Right, yeah, no, I thought the report actually on the website, I did read it and I thought it was excellent. And I think the group here is doing a great job. It just, we're excited about what's gonna happen there, and looking at, where we go from here is kind of where my questions are coming from. So thank you for all your hard work. You're doing a great job.
Any other questions from folks online? Okay, not seeing any, I would accept what I have to say, that we're going to go into executive session. Consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. And in order to, you want to read the rest of that?
Sure.
Okay, if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body, and not to return to open session after. So I would accept a motion to do so.
So moved, Peter?
Okay, we need to take a roll call. Aaron,
Yes.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Dan, yes. Mark,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Linda,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
and Patrick.
Yes.
And Lee has joined us too. Lee,
You have to make me go.
sorry, 1 second, Lee.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. You're welcome. All right, everybody, thank you.